G'day and welcome again to another Campfire Project panel discussion. And today I have with me, first of all, Angela Heise up there in Queensland. How are you, Angela?
Good morning. Hello, everybody. I'm really well. It's a fabulous morning here.
Well, is it nice and warm up there?
Not really, but it's Queensland winter. You know, when everybody else is freezing, you know, we are going, it's cold and it's 15 degrees and everybody is putting on their woolies.
Oh, there you go. Well, it's a lot colder down here in Newcastle. And we also have Nicole Davidson from Sydney. How are you, Nicole?
I'm great. Thank you, Alan, and lovely to be here.
Thank you. You be feeling the cold like me at the moment.
Feeling the cold, but got the heater on, so life's good.
Excellent.
Sun's out, so that's the main thing.
And then we have Nick Pereira from over there in Canada. How are you, Nick?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
And what's your weather like over there?
Today's good. It's a good day. It's a nice clear day, kind of windy, and it's July 1st, so we're celebrating. It's Canada Day today. So after this campfire discussion, then we're going to head up to the roof of our house where we're going to be able to see the fireworks.
Brilliant.
So yeah.
Yeah, because it's evening over there now, so you'd be able to enjoy those. That's
right. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And that's what I love about this age that we live in, where you know, we could connect with people and learn from people all over the world. It just always fascinates me when I'm on a conversation with people from all over the globe. And I'm like, this is so cool. And I'm just in my living room. I'm not even wearing pants. No, I'm just joking. I am, I swear.
You know, and I really love it because I'm talking to all these people around the world and I'm doing it on a regular basis, which is fantastic. Getting all the different viewpoints and everything else. But today we're going to talk about leadership and what does a world need? Do we need more male drive or female empathy in our leadership style? And Angela, you were the one who suggested this subject, so I'd love you to kick us off if you would, please.
Okay, well, you've already given a good summary. Again, we've got on one hand, I think the world is polarizing at the moment. So on one hand, we've got the male power, we've got Trump, we've got Kim, we've got China, we've got Turkey, we've got all of these countries where male power is all about overpowering and proving that they are the strongest. And how can we make sure that nobody usurps us and that we remain, you know, at the top of what they call their game. But it's at the expense of people around them and of other countries. And on the other hand, we've got people like Jacinda Ardern who goes and declares rivers sentient beings and who really comes from a place of empathy and says that is really where we need to go. And then on the middle ground, we've got Justin Trudeau in Canada who, you know, sort of seems to be in the middle. And it's the yin yang that I really like. And he doesn't seem to have a lot of friends around that. I mean, people make fun of him from what I understand, or they say he needs to be stronger. And when he's stronger, then he is too strong. So I don't think anybody can get it right at the moment. You know, people are either too soft or too hard or not enough of this and not enough of that. And I just wonder, what does the world really need at the moment and what are we ready for? Because democracy seems to be really fragile at the moment.
I noticed that. And with the pleasing everybody, well, that's pretty much impossible. It's going to be really the spread of the people who are out there. But what sort of leader, as far as Canada goes, Nick, what do you find with your leader over there? Or leadership?
To be quite honest, I'm not. I don't pay attention too much. So my opinion on the overall political situation in Canada, it probably isn't. I don't have much of one, and mainly because I find that no matter what, as Angela already pointed out, no matter what, somebody's going to be pissed off, right? No matter what, it doesn't matter. It's the nature of politics. Politics. That is its nature. And I think that, you know, when we present the question, what do we need? In my opinion, we need a deeper understanding of, in yoga, we call it dharma. Dharma means nature. We need a greater understanding of nature rather than a greater understanding of politics, because it is the nature of politics to be decisive, to be polarizing. And I don't think that that'll ever change. If you look at history, going way back. I mean, if you read the Mahabharata, which is an Indian epic, polarization was there. We're talking thousands and thousands of years ago, right? Because that's the nature of politics. So the idea that politics will be the place where we're going to find unity, I think that's the illusion. I think we need to stop looking at politics as the place where change happens. It is not its nature. We have to go, what is the nature of transformation? And you won't find it in politics. So essentially, I propose just let them do what they want to do. It's our continuous conversation about what these political leaders are doing that gives them power. But if we shift and just don't fight it, like it is what it is. And I'm not even saying it's all negative, because there is need for structure and, you know, formation to live in, to change resources and to have even the lifestyles that we have. But I think personally, to present a whole new question to the world, where is how do we as individuals create change within ourselves and in our home families? I think that so many of us are so caught up in the big picture that we're losing the little picture. That, you know, I don't know about the rest of the world, but I'll know in North America, we have so much mental health issues, high divorce rates, high uneducation, all kinds of issues that first world countries, right, like should have, that we have. And I think that we're very distracted with these political issues, that for the common person at the end of the day, their life doesn't change. I know my life, my family's life, conservative came in power, liberals came in power, then the conservatives again, then the liberals again. And honestly, nothing much in my life has changed. So for me, it's very hard to get involved with it, because I'm looking at my family, I'm looking at my neighborhood, I'm looking at my community. I'm seeing the political leaders changing, and my community hasn't shifted. My family still, like, you see, all the stuff, that the everyday life stuff, it hasn't changed. And I'm not saying that there isn't a big change that could be made up there, but I don't think it's going to happen from there. So I honestly have no idea what Justin Trudeau's up to, but I do know he does get made fun of a lot. That I do know. But I think it's just the nature of the position, you know? So no matter what you do, if you're prime minister, if you're president, if you're congressman, you should just know that you're going to get made fun of.
I think what you just said there about the fact that you've had the change of power and everything else, different parties, but your life hasn't really changed. And I know that we put so much belief behind the governments, whatever they're doing is going to majorly affect us. And in Australia, I know that we virtually stop as soon as there's an election coming up. And then when the election's over, we wait to see what they're doing. And business just seems to stop because of it, which is not a real good thing.
Well, take a look at the last American election, right? People were furious that Donald Trump got elected. People were like depressed, like all kinds of issues. And, you know, most of my business comes from America, right? I'm living in Canada, but my company is a global company. I coach people all around the world. And so many people I talked to from the US, and their day-to-day life did not change, right, over the day. Now, did it affect certain people? Yes, this is not true for everybody. I know what I'm saying is not true for everybody. Well, because if you work in certain industries, you will be affected, right? And in Donald Trump's case, if you are Mexican, right, or, you know, you would have definitely felt it, right? So I'm not saying that this is a blanket statement I'm making for everyone. I'm just saying for me specifically, as a kid who grew up in Canada, I was born in Brazil, but I grew up in Canada. My whole life's been in Canada. I've seen many political changes, both globally as well as locally. And generally, my day-to-day life and well-being is not changed.
Okay, may I make a point here, Nick, if I may? Yeah. That sounds like we've got absolutely nothing to do with politics. We are the ones who elect these politicians. So we are actually contributors. I mean, if this is a democracy, then we are responsible for the politicians at the top, right? And there's a saying that says, we always get the politicians we deserve. You know, so the question is how can we shift? And I totally agree with you with regards to that politics really doesn't, or politicians really don't make an impact on day-to-day life for us. But how can we change our consciousness to such a degree that we actually elect politicians who represent the thinking that we have? Because again, on one hand, you've got people who get really depressed, and on the other hand, you get people who are highly activated by politicians that get elected. But if the majority of people, and it seems to be the case afterwards, but people go, this person got elected, how did that happen? You know, how can we actually make sure that we get the leaders we actually deserve in a good way?
We have to know what is good, right? Actually, if we're talking about shifting,
what I mean, yeah,
right, yeah, which is a talk of moral. So the moral discussion of what is good is what is bad comes up, and we'll always have the division there. That's why I'm saying that the politics in its nature, the whole world is full of duality. Politics will be full of duality too, because it's very nature. So if we're talking about shifting consciousness, then we have to at first become unattached to results, and that means also being a little bit aloof. If we're truly talking about wanting to shift inwards, then there's a nature of letting the world do what it's going to do, and you as an individual bringing your consciousness inwards and dealing with your own dualities within ourselves, right? So how can I affect politics? Well, political at the bigger level, I think what you're saying, Angela, is that we're all participating. Even if you choose to not participate, that's participating. Yeah, so that's acknowledging our dependence on each other, our interdependence, let's say, right? We're acknowledging that we are all interdependent. And I think that's actually a great thing to acknowledge, because if we actually acknowledge that, then it doesn't make sense me, even if I disagree or we disagree, it doesn't make me sense hating anybody, or because we actually acknowledge interdependence, right? So I think right away that conversation starts to change our consciousness. But I think as soon as we put, how do we change our consciousness so we can elect leaders? I'm proposing that when we actually shift our consciousness, this whole system would be rearranged. We wouldn't even necessarily approach politics in the same way. But we can say, how do we approach politics in a different consciousness, but then want to approach it in the same way at the same time? When our consciousness shifts, we approach everything differently, including politics.
Nicole?
I was just going to say, because also in the US, Marianne Williamson is running for a position. And that's what she's all about. She's all about changing the whole way we do it and coming from a more spiritual place with that, and leading the way and showing people how. I also think, I think when you were talking before, Nick, about, our mental health issues, our divorce rates and everything, I think they're also symptomatic of the disconnection that people feel from ourselves. I think that's really at the heart of it. Because when we're sitting there looking for solutions outside of ourselves, that's when we're able to succumb to fear, and we're looking for short-term fixes rather than a long-term transformation, and actually deciding what it is we want to create. Because I totally agree that we're always going to have that polarity. But I think, with the arrival of Jacinda Ardern, who's showing a different way, and the likes of Marianne Williamson and, different politicians who are showing a different way, they're actually allowing people to recognise the fear they feel within themselves. And that's okay. That's okay that we feel that. But I think then that allows people to participate in a way where they can sit there and be with that, but also recognise that they're feeling safe enough in a way to then start putting themselves out there or thinking about things in a different way. And I think until we see something like that, until somebody like that comes along, and perhaps it's perfect that it comes along at the exact time where we have Donald Trump, because it's such an antidote to that kind of thing. And I absolutely believe that Donald Trump's based on fear and ego and all those things. But that's for me, that's so fear-based, and we're looking outside of ourselves for me, people looking outside of themselves to fight their battles, where what you're saying, Nick, is that in our daily lives, that's not what it's all about. It's about our connection to ourselves. And I think that's the bit that's really missing for people.
Well, and I mean, to relate it directly to politics, right? So that we you know, on the subject of leadership, right? And what kind of leadership do we need? I think it's one thing to say that, like, I like the saying, Angela, you said, and I'll butcher it here, so you can correct it, but it's something based upon, you know, we elect the leaders that are reflective of us, right? You know, this type of thing, or we get leaders that we deserve. And I think that's very accurate to say that, right? At least it shows a collective, more of a collective anyways, consciousness is where's the collective consciousness at? And ultimately, I think that the major shift, the major political shift, is not a political shift in the traditional sense. It's a shift in, as Angela mentioned, a shift in consciousness, or what I would even propose is a shift in heart. Our world right now is solely based upon production. All of our governments, major ones, right? You know, you talk about the US, China, the major ones. What are they all focused on? Production, business. They're running their countries like businesses. So what we actually have is business people in charge. This is the issue. The nature of a business person is to always be expanding. It's their nature. So when you put a business person in charge, they will want to expand and grow at the cost of their own people. Like, because they'll run it, like they'll see the citizens of their country. They don't see them as citizens, more as they see them like as employees. Right? So you see, this is what I'm talking about educating nature. But actually, what we want in charge is not business people. Business people have convinced the world that it's business people that need to be in charge because it will fulfill the material desires of the people. It will say, look, you know, if Donald Trump's a great business guy, right? I don't know if he is or not, but I'm just saying, like, Donald Trump is a great business, kind of the thinking, right? Donald Trump's great. So if we elect him, he's obviously going to make great deals for the country, and you know, me, the guy who's working in the factory, or me, the guy who's, you know, whatever, doing the job, I will benefit from that. But that is not true. The person at the bottom will say, the majority of us, right? We're not going to benefit from that because we're not sitting at the business table making the deal, right? But actually, to look at leaders who realize that the purpose of the government isn't to make money. The purpose of the government is to take care of the well-being of the people, which means that they're facilitating what's happening in the businesses or regulating it, so there's some control there, right? But there's some free market. The businesses can do what they do in a paradigm. Education is there, but also the land, the people. Like the government is supposed to be taking care of the well-being as a whole. But governments are no longer focused on that. And that's where I think that's because we're not focused on it. How do we run our life? Our whole life. You know, I'm a young guy, right? I'm 34 years old. And I would say for about 30 years, I've only been taught one thing, which is how to be productive member of society. You know, I'm an initiated member of an ancient yogic tradition. I've gone down a very deep spiritual path. And one thing I learned about being happy and joyful and seeing the world in a new light is that we have to make the goal different. And I don't think that's going to be done by politicians because they're not interested in that, because that would mean a change in structure. Look at the people the people who always made the biggest changes never really did it in the political system. Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, Jesus Christ, Lord Buddha, you know, Lord Krishna. You see all of them? They were very politically involved, but were never in the system. Mahatma Gandhi never sat in an office. because if he did, he would have had to succumb to the nature of the system. But it's the system as a whole. So we're talking about what leader goes in place. And I guess what I'm sharing is actually, it doesn't matter what leader goes in place because the nature of the system is the nature of it. It was built with a certain intention from the get-go. So no matter what leader you put in place, remember that they are not the sole leader. Donald Trump is, even though they would love to, I'm sure Donald Trump would love to believe that he's making all the calls and shots, and that's what we're presented. It's not the way it works.
No,
right? If that was the way it works, the day someone got in office, things would change. But we can see it takes a long time. Why? Because there's all these checks and balances. And I have some friends within the Canadian government that, members of parliament as well as local. And they, like the mayor, I was just speaking to the mayor of my local city in St. John, and he'll tell you, he can't just make a change. It's not up to him alone. But the system itself is designed to keep us fighting. So what we're actually, in my opinion, my perspective is what we're actually looking for is a whole new system. And Marianne Williamson, God love her, but she will also just fall into, see, she couldn't do it on independently. So what she had to do, she had to go with the Democratic, same with Donald Trump. He couldn't do it independent. See, so now they're part of the system. So while she as an individual has a great message, she's still working in a system that is not designed for what she wants.
Okay, so we need to disrupt the system. And how do we do that? Educating people in a different way?
Yeah. Well, what we're looking at, I like the idea of this because it's all about, as we talk about the, the political system, it's still coming back to us as human beings. As you said, it's like a business that the way it's been run. And we know that business in the Western world, 87% of people are disengaged in their work, so they're not happy. So when we've got a government running the way it is, the majority of the people aren't going to be happy. So we're all searching along the way. You also said that we've got some great people coming on with great ideas, but we've got this massive system that's going to draw them in, and they're going to be limited by that to a certain degree. So how do we actually break around that? As Angela just mentioned, then how do we disrupt? They're the sort of things, because yes, there's a discussion about politics, but it's really coming back to us as individuals and how we're looking at our lives and everything else. And is it male, just the male situation that is the problem, or is it that the type of male that we have running the countries, the wrong type? We've moved to the aggression and fear-based, and I think they're just as scared as we are that they're in power.
Yes. Trump never expected to be voted in. So, yeah, I think he was probably the one most scared when he found out he had won. I was going to say something. So I gave a talk a little while ago about to young 15-year-old girls. And I talked about the fact that anger sometimes is a good thing. And that we really need to stand up for ourselves. And actually, when we participate in the democratic process, it's not about being a destructive force, but it's about saying, enough is enough, let's do something else. But we are teaching in our school system, and I mean, from what I hear, it's all about fitting in, conforming. It's all about handing over the power to the people at the top. And it's about really repeating the system over and over. So it's teaching people what to think rather than how to think. And when we teach people how to think and about creating their own life and participating rather than fitting themselves into, turning themselves into a pretzel to fit into that particular box that we decide people should be in, that's when we conform. And that's when we say, okay, I'll hand it over to the people up there and I'll vote for them because then I get on with my life. And as much as I appreciate, as you said, Nick, life doesn't change when somebody gets voted in. But what if we educated people to actually say we're making a conscious choice about who we vote in? And I'm not just talking about politics. I'm also talking about people we work for. Do I really want to work for this particular person because they have a certain way of dealing with things? Or do I actually give them feedback and say, you know what, not really working? And when enough people do that, and when we reach critical mass, then we have that consciousness shift. So again, politics, business, it doesn't matter to me. It's about what is a leader, and a leader is somebody who gets the votes, somebody we fall in behind. We go with that person. And I think it's time we choose who we want to stand behind. So,
I think that when we say let's choose who we stand behind, I'm totally with you. And I think that it's time we start looking outside of the political sphere for who that is that we stand behind. So what I mean by that is that, for instance, first of all, there's a couple of things you asked like, well, how do we do it? And how do we actually change the system? And I'll just tell you how I'm doing it in my own life, because that's all I can ever share, right? Is my own experience. Is I am learning to simplify my life. What I realize is that we're very dependent. We have become dependent on, let's say, big governments, big corporations, big systems, because I think unconsciously, at least in my generation, I didn't have a conscious, this is the most educated conversation I've had up to this date, right? So, right, meaning like, like you got to think about like a young kid growing up in Canada. I'm influenced by hip hop, I'm influenced by MTV, and I'm influenced by what, this is what God is to me. God is 50 Cent and Jay-Z and this is like, wow, like I want to be like these guys, right? And then it's like, you pursue that and realize, well, okay, as much drugs or money that anyone could ever do and make and blah, 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 you don't get it. But there's no other option. It's like, well, what else is there, right? So very few people like myself start going down and end up on spiritual paths or different paths. But actually, the majority of people just figure there's no other option. And so one of the things that I've learned in my own experience is that I've got to simplify my life, like get back to like some real wholesome stuff, like family, right? Like spending more time with family, getting back to the land a bit, right? Let's, grow our own fruits and vegetables in our backyards. What this starts to do is it starts to create independence within people. You see, right now, we don't even get our own food. The system gets it for us. We go down to the box supermarket and we pick it up, So all of that is intertwined into it, right? So if you talk about education, I believe education is the way to do it, but it's not like here, learn geography or learn this. It's like here's how to actually grow your own food. Right? Here's how to simplify your life and come back to living more of a natural lifestyle. The more natural one lives, the less dependent they are on the bigger systems, which starts to give that system. See, the system is only in control as long as we are being controlled by it. The more dependent we are on it, the more it can dictate our lives and the more, we have to play that game. But the more that we actually can move to a more of a natural living, there's still need for government. Again, I'm not like, an anarchist or something like down with the government. I'm not like that at all. No, I'm saying that there's a need for it, but there's less dependence on it. So because there's less dependence, then there's less control.
But
it's asking people to live a simpler life, which, people don't want to do, right? Like, because that's like taking away our conveniences and it's actually changing our lifestyle. And in a way, as a majority, we talk about change, but then when we talk about like real lifestyle changes, people are like, I don't really want to do that.
Yeah, well, it's always somebody else. Nicole, you were going to say something a moment ago.
I was going to talk about in the education part. So first of all, I think in Australia we have a lot of career politicians, right, who have a vested interest in keeping themselves in the system, right? Peter Garrett, I don't know if you're familiar with Midnight Oil, Nick. Are you familiar with a band called Midnight Oil? Okay, so Peter Garrett, they were very, what would you say, cause-orientated band, really popular Australian band. He decided to go into politics, ended up being part of the Labor Party, became part of the machine, totally wiped, right? But I also, there was students were actually striking on behalf of climate change recently, and I was absolutely horrified to read a quote by our resources minister, who said basically all they learn to do by striking is learn how to join the dole queue.
That
Now,
was Peter Garrett?
no, that was, sorry, no, this was I think, what's his
Because he
name?
was resources minister.
Matt Canavan.
Okay.
The current resources minister. But what I'm saying here is that basically you have politicians putting kids in boxes. So they want, we talk about wanting our kids to be educated. Then when they're going and using their thinking skills, their ethics, their moral skills to actually speak out, they're told to get back in your box. And I found that absolutely horrifying, because I just thought, good for you. And then you had people saying, well, why aren't they doing it on a weekend? You know, they're doing it during school time, trying to get out of school. And it's like, well, they're doing it during school time, and good on them, because if they're doing it on the weekend, who's going to pay attention?
Who's going to pay attention? Yeah, that's right. That was the best time to do it. Yeah.
And that's the biggest problem that we've got with our education system, is that entrepreneurs, anybody who thinks outside the box, that's eradicated straight away. But yet we know what brings the country forward are the entrepreneurs. We've got at this present time more young entrepreneurs getting in startups and starting businesses than we've ever had before. But the education they got was subjects. They weren't taught how to think and how to be creative. They were taught how to fit into a mould. We say that, and twice I've spoken to the government, 2012 and 2016, about education. They've come back to me both times and they've said that the kids are the most important thing to them. They spend so many $1 million on the children. These are in both responses over those 4 years. And that, but they don't endorse third-party programs. They don't look at anything new. They only do what they've always done, including the head psychologist for New South Wales Education in 2016 told me that they knew what they were doing wasn't working, but if they did it long enough, they expected a different result. Now, I don't think she listened to Einstein, because his view of insanity. That fits right into that. But we stifle the children and we look at it, okay, what jobs are there? And then we mould the kids into that. So they're made to fit the system, as opposed to what is their personalities, therefore what sort of careers would suit them the best, move them into and show them that sort of study so they can get into those fields, create the jobs around those for them. And then that way they're going to be happy at work, they're going to be more productive, business is going to make more money, because we know if 87% of people are disengaged in their work, the amount of money and productivity that's totally lost, I don't think these people running businesses really know what they're doing, because they're losing a lot of money. And then those people are miserable at home, they're having domestic violence, their kids are unhappy, there's bullying, then the kids go and perpetrate bullying on other kids because they need to raise their self-esteem. So everything where we try to get people to fit in, we always destroy things. If we then got everything, the environment to fit the people, be completely different. And that's where this leadership question comes in. Masculine or male or female, is it some more the masculine and feminine energy, regardless of whether they're male or female? Is that where we need to be going? Do we need to start looking at that? As you said, Nick, does our behaviour need to be such that we then start to attract the right sort of leaders? Because all these discussions always come back to us as individuals.
I think it comes back to what Angela said, you know, we get the leaders we deserve. Our spiritual master in the Bhakti Yoga or Hare Krishna movement said the same thing, that he said the leaders are reflective of the people and the people are reflective. You vote for what you believe, whether you're conscious or unconscious of it. But most people we know are living unconsciously. There's little self-awareness happening about why we do what we do. Why are we driven? Why are we attracted to certain types of people? So right now, and people do generally vote on what they don't like because they're just more negatively charged. So the elections in Canada are starting. So all the campaigning and propaganda is starting and all the signs are going on, right? And I saw one thing online and the lady said, you know, I'll vote for anyone as long as Trudeau is out. So you see, okay. You see, it's like that I would say chalks up to a lot of the way that people vote. Because in general, you know, there are not many people having this conversation in the world, like really having it. Like they're kind of like yelling at, you know, Fox News or CNN, you know, on the news channel, and they're upset, and maybe they're telling their dog why they're upset and their ideas. But very few people are actually like having this conversation in a way that's grounded, that's open, in a way like I'm having the conversation to learn, to explore, to share, rather than having the conversation of, no, you're an idiot and that's it. So again, it comes like, it's like a whole different approach to it. It's like a whole different mood, you know? Maybe if we could get all the politicians maybe to smile a little bit before they came into a meeting, then naturally that the mood of it would shift. But when the mood is just, I'm here, as you met, if I'm here with an agenda, if I have an agenda, I'm a politician or a leader of any kind, and I have an agenda, then I cannot really listen to the other party or the opposition.
Okay.
Because as soon as their agenda goes against, like if I have an agenda, and my agenda, by the way, is paid for by, sponsored by somebody, right? Then it is my job actually to stand in your way. Even if what you have to say might be beneficial for the people as a whole, I am going to see it as my job. And that's why I'm saying that the system as a whole is flawed in that way, right? And that takes a different shift of consciousness to actually create something brand new.
Okay, so the question if I may, Ellen, the question I've got for you then, Nick, is if you say that, you said at the beginning of our conversation that you weren't really involved in politics and you don't really know anything about Trudeau and the world politics and all of that. And at the same time, I hear you say that we really need to get involved. We need to get into people's faces to say, in a good way, that this is no longer working. We need to change the system.
Yeah.
So how is that going to work if you're on one hand, you don't want to get into politics, you want to simplify your life, get more in touch with nature, and I'm all in for that. I've got my own backyard with my own trees and my own veggies. But if we're saying the system doesn't work and these guys are interacting with each other in a way that I don't want to get engaged in, then we're creating a discrepancy. Then we've got the politicians at the top and we're going, you just do that stuff. I do my own stuff and I'm just not part of the system. But that's not changing the system. That's not really.
So the distinction there is that when I said, you know, I'm not involved in politics, meaning the current structure, but you, as you've mentioned, we're all involved, whether we want to be or not, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that I agree with you and say, yeah, no, you're right. We're all involved. So anything I do is therefore political or not political. So when I say I'm not involved in the political system, meaning I'm not paying attention to the bickering or why not people like Justin Trudeau, right? That's what I mean by that. And when I'm saying that we should be involved, meaning like what we're doing right now, this is being involved, right? But it's not being involved like that. We're being involved right now by having an open discussion about changes and what do we see and differences in thoughts. And if we can mimic this, if the four of us could mimic this in a bigger way, then this is us changing the system. But you see, I'm not fighting against Trudeau or not. I'm not giving. That's what I'm saying is like I'm just not fighting. I'm not saying Donald Trump is good or bad. I'm not saying. I just don't care because they're going to do what they're going to do. If I sit here and say Donald Trump is an idiot, nothing has changed.
Yeah. Well,
what
you resist will persist, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And so that's what I meant by that. So what I am suggesting is that we have more conversations like this, where actually the nature of it is different, because we're all coming at a certain level of consciousness. We're coming at a certain value system that says, hey, you know what? I may see this differently, but I get you're a human being and I'm a human being and we're interdependent. So it's better that we learn to create a relationship than disharmony. And then we can have unity and diversity. We have to acknowledge diversity and differences. I think if we don't acknowledge diversity and differences, personally, I think that we're fooling ourselves to ever think that we will 100% get everybody to see one thing.
And we don't want that. We don't want to.
Gosh, that would be boring.
We want that. But I think that, you know, going back to education, when I was teaching in these international schools, that was all about diversity. And it was all about creating environments in which there was respect for that diversity. Unless you've been exposed to that, though, it can be hard to understand it, and it can be quite scary. So I think it's what you're saying, Nick. How do we create opportunities so that we can offer people a different way and to be exposed to that? Because I think once you do start those conversations where you're not necessarily feeling attacked and you see the beauty in that diversity, that's when I think the magic can start to happen. And I also think in terms of, you know, my experience with these international schools, I spent 5 years at this amazing school in China, and it showed me what's possible in terms of leadership. And prior to that, I had never seen that to that extent. So I now know what's possible, and I'm not willing to that's why when I came back to Australia, there was no way I was going to teach here, because I would have been put in the box and everything I know would have been shut down. So I think it's about, you know, taking what we know and, as you say, providing opportunities where you know, we can still be coming from different value systems, and we can be coming from, you know, different ways of being, but absolutely allowing the fact that we're all human on this planet. That's the one thing that unites us. And I think it's up to, you know, people who have the capacity to do that. Not everybody has the capacity to do that. So for us who do have that capacity, just to create opportunities, and it is on a one-on-one level. And it is conversation by conversation. And it is also, you know, looking at our own stuff. You know, there are times where I get really like, you know, but I have to then look at that and see why that's happening. And then that's a learning for me that I can then share with others. And so I think it's then, you know, being able to step forward and us being a leader in our own life, and then taking that leadership one step at a time to expand that. And I think that's how we sort of change the consciousness as well.
And that's what I like about it. That's why, as I said, with the subject and everything else, I knew it was going to come back to ourselves, because I'm not out there to change the politics and saying that everything's got to change and everything else, telling everybody else what's got to be done. It comes back to us as individuals. And the conversations, first of all, our awareness, our conversations we have with others. And when we're having those conversations, it may not sound like much is happening, but if everyone's consciousness is changing, all of a sudden we have a massive change in the systems, because the systems are the result of the environment. We change ourselves, therefore we change our environments, we change the system. It always comes back to us. So what are we doing in doing that change? I think that when I looked at politics, and we talked about male and female, that politics has been male. The male aspect has gone to the more aggressive. And so we've gone off to that business sense. And in business, it's always being the best business. Well, you can't run countries that way, because you're going to then be separate from every other country. So it's no inclusion in that, it's separation. And no wonder we've got so many turmoils around the world. But on the feminines, when we look at it being female, and the females that have come in have been a lot softer, a little bit more consciously aware. They've been away from that power struggle. So it really comes back to, I think, each of us, male, female, looking at that energy that we have ourselves, and what are we actually projecting out there? Yeah. For me to turn around and say, we've got to stand up against the government and go out and protest, we've wasted it. We've lost it if we got to that point. We don't need to get to there. If we change our consciousness, it naturally changes. It's got to come back to us. I need to make my changes within me. And as other people do the same thing, that's when we're going to get changes. Angela.
So we need to stop making frog soup.
Yeah.
Does everybody know about the metaphor of the frog? No. So what happens when you take a frog and you throw it in a pot of really hot water? What will the frog do?
It'll jump out.
Yes. But you take a frog and you put him into a pot of nice lukewarm water. And the frog will do what? Paddle around, have a really good old time. And then you turn up the heat gradually. That's how you make frog soup. By the time the frog realizes it's too hot, it can't get out anymore.
Too late. That's exactly
we are in
right.
frog soup. We are, and this is why we probably need to go on a withdrawal program. I mean, we really need to get ourselves off, again, social media, entertainment, gaming, and all of those things, creating 3D realities where we're no longer part of this world, and again, be active participants. And we're teaching people not to do that. I mean, I see parents sitting in restaurants, and the first thing they do is they sit down and they hand the iPad to their kids. And then they get on their own phones. You know, that's not how you create a conversation about things. That's not education. That's not enlightening the mind. That's not shifting consciousness. That's numbing the mind. And that's why that's how we also, in my opinion, we give away a lot of our power. Because we don't stand up to things, you know. I mean, we're giving away our civil rights with both hands at the moment to people who say they've got our best interest at heart, when we all know that that's not really the case. Very short-term thinking. So
we know that if we go up against somebody and face to face, and we want to make a change, we'll get a fight, we'll get a struggle from them, and it's hard to move them. But if you come up beside them and you just lean on them and you slowly move them around, that's your frog soup. That's what we've virtually done. We've had all these things happening around us, new technologies and everything else. We don't use them for the purpose that we should be using them for. We use them for escape. I know that the ABC yesterday were talking about the new glasses you put, and you've got your phone on it, you put the phone on, and you're looking at space and you're going out into space. Great education tool. But I can see people using that as a distraction from what's going on around them. If you're using it to learn, that's great. So it's not the tools, it's not the technology and things like that that are at fault. It's the way in which we're using it. Media can be either social or antisocial. It's not the media. It's our attitude to it. So it's always going to come back to us. You know, if we're using it to get away from stuff, that's detrimental to us and it's detrimental to everybody around us. But if we're using it to actually grow and expand and go into new things and bring people together.
Totally, yeah.
So
but we really need to re-educate people to do that. Instead of saying, you know, sit and watch some TV to educate yourself. And I've seen parents do that as well. You know, here, watch this educational program, just don't talk to me. It's about really actively engaging with people, using them as tools. And I've seen kids literally go ballistic when you take away their iPad or their phone. Like literally go completely crazy. It's like withdrawal from crack. You know, and again, re-educating the brain. Nick?
It really is a withdrawal from crack, because it does. I mean, there's tons of studies that show, right, all these social media and everything that we're engaged in, it's just lighting up our dopamine centers, right? We're totally getting flooded here, and then we're becoming dull to real life. So real life seems boring to people. Hence, that's why we, you know, need all these other stimulants to try to get us up. But what we don't recognize, and this is what I was saying, like with, let's go back to more simple living. It's that, it's like, let's get back to the values, family values, simple living, you know, spending time together and finding entertainment through community, you know, but that is slowly, is the frog soup, I guess, analogy is being taken. I don't think people realize it because they're in the soup. So there's some of us who realize, there's just some of us have gone, whoa, wait a sec, I think we're being boiled here, people, right? And I don't want to be boiled. And I think we have a choice to make. And I think that each of us will choose to do that differently. But overall, I think that's where each individual follows their nature or heart, because there are some people who are more, they have more of that warrior spirit, right? They're going to want to fight, like they will want to fight, but not everybody has that nature. So to call on everybody to take up this fighting spirit is also not acknowledging people's nature. Some people are much more Brahminical, intellectual in nature, contemplative. Some people are more business oriented. They're going to want to move resources. Some people are more artistic or work with their hands. Right. And it's kind of like that idea of Alan was saying, you know, education of finding what people's nature is and then moving them towards that direction. But to do that, it will take some serious effort on everyone's part. And I think that there is a large portion of us who is willing to do that. But the reality at this time is that we're not, because one of the things is that people are tired of politics. Like as an overall, like, it's like, okay, you know, voting rates are even very low, right? Like, even people, like you mentioned, like, to go out and vote, right? To get people, because they don't feel like they can make a change. And I often, you know, in coaching, for instance, when I'm coaching someone, it's about giving them small wins at first, right? So I think we have to remember that with people. We have to give them small wins. So when we talk about like big issues, for most people, they do not have the capacity to wrap their head around how they can affect that. So what do you do when you're confused or you feel overwhelmed? Nothing. You do nothing. So it is systematic that the current structure keeps, whether that's by design or not, I don't know, but it seems like to me that there's a large feeling of overwhelm. So that's why, for myself, I'm trying to inspire people to make simple, small changes to give them wins, right? Hey, you want to make a difference in the world? Yeah, you want to change the political system in the world? Great. You know, one of the major factors of your life, happiness, and joy is the food you put in your body. So if you learn to grow your own food, then you are making a big difference in your immediate life. You'll notice it in your immediate life. You'll be more connected to your earth. You'll have something to engage in. And whether you realize it or not, you're actually making a political difference. You're making a political statement. Because anytime I go and pick my own tomato out of the yard, rather than going to the store, I've made a political statement. But I've done it without fighting anybody.
See, and
I've done it by engaging myself into what is healthy for me. That's kind of the Mahatma Gandhi, be the change, this type of thing.
That's it. Well, as you said, with the nudges that we've had and slow changes in politics, going up and fighting and doing that aggressive thing is not going to make any changes. It's a matter of doing it gently again. It all starts with us. The fact, as you said, being more independent automatically starts to change the political system because of less control over it. And it's up to each person. But that then comes into, I'm not saying everybody has to do it. The only person who has to do it in my world is me. And if I'm focusing on my changes, I know that's affecting the people around me. That's a subtle change to everybody else. I know if I go up to somebody and I smile at them, I'll get a smile back. If I go up and scowl at them, I'll get a similar expression back from them. So if I make changes in me, I then present a new environment to the people around me, and their consciousness starts to shift as well. It's that subtle nudging and changing the direction. So if we're doing that, then it's always going, as we said, it's always going to come back to us. Now, Nicole, you were going to say something again a moment ago.
I was just going to say, in terms of what you were saying, Nick, about, you know, everybody having their own strengths. One thing that I absolutely learned to, you know, through my international teaching and this particular environment that I was in which I just kind of went whoosh, you know, I learnt that we create the conditions to be successful. So every day I'm thinking, how can I create the conditions for me to be successful? And how can I create the conditions for the people around me to be successful? And, you know, in terms of, you know, workplaces, how do we create the conditions for everyone here to be successful? But that takes, you know, you have to remove ego from that. You know, you have to remove the things that are actually going to prevent that. But I love that question because it just opens up opportunity and it involves people in different conversations. So, and it's about continually learning, like treat people as learners. Once you leave school, you're kind of expected to know everything. You've got about, I think you've got about a year or two when you start working, and then you just got to fall into line. And I just used to really quite annoy me because I was the International Baccalaureate, which was all about international mindedness, which is just wonderful. And it's so opposite to the schooling that, you know, kids get here in Australia. But one thing about that, which I've just lost my train of thought, what was I going to say? Oh, they talk about lifelong learning. Now, in this international school I was at, it was all about lifelong learning. But then in the real world, when you're out there, it's not. So I think that's up to us to sit there and be curious and to, you know, continually ask ourselves, you know, what can I learn today, or who can I connect with today, and just to be expansive, because I think when we're expansive, that's when our world and our consciousness continues to expand. And I think for me, it's just a good reminder that that's what I, you know, want to keep doing every day.
Yeah. When we look at the bigger picture, if we want the world to change, it comes back to the country to change. It comes back to the environment around us to change. For that environment to change, it comes back to us. So it's also, as you said, you're looking at what you, for yourself, the people around you, and for the workplace and things like that, the next level out. Everyone's looking at, well, how do we change the workplace? And nobody's looking at, oh, we need to change our immediate environment. Oh, and to change that, oh, I have to change.
Yeah, but they do
I
say,
want the world to change. I have to be the catalyst that starts that. And the catalyst is not going out there and getting them to change. It's getting myself to change. That automatically changes my environment. That allows me, that environment then to change the people around them. Because if well, there's a guy I met in Sydney the other week. He's part of a group. They run on a weekend, and they have T-shirts with a big smiley face on it. There's about 20 of them. On the Sunday, they're running up the street. Their competition is to see which one can get the most people that they've run past to smile. So they're going past with smiles. They're saying hello and everything else. Got these big smiley face T-shirts and everything else. That, you can imagine all the people that they run past, even if they turn around and they go, oh, you should have seen these crazy guys that just ran past me with these T-shirts on. You know, it's getting them talking. They've immediately made a change in their environment. The impact of that is massive. Greater than somebody who's getting up and going and protesting, because people don't want to hear the protest.
Well, they're changing this system, but it's not like it's not in the traditional way of changing the system. They're changing consciousness. They're changing culture. Right? We have to essentially talk about the culture, the underlining culture, and those are the invisible factors. Is our culture like angry? You know, is there an anger to our culture? Is there an acceptance to our culture? Is there a easy breezy to our culture, right? It's kind of like, I describe it as mood, right? What's the mood? You know, it's one thing, you know, of sometimes like, you know, if let's say traditional news is on, and I was like, just I tell people, put them on mute. Don't listen to anything they're saying. Now just watch their face, just see who they are. And what you'll see is the mood in which they are in. And that mood is telling you a lot about what they can create or cannot create. Cannot create anything. We cannot talk about creating a peaceful world if we're coming from an angry mood. That's an illusion. In yoga, we call it Maya, illusion. It's like I'm going to create peace here. Everybody follow me. We're going to have a peaceful world. Really? But that's what we're
by aggression. Yeah, it really works. But it's the same thing. I'll tell you, people, you know, if you want to actually learn how to read people, especially where they're telling the truth, watch a video and watch their behavior with the sound off, and watch the changes in. So you'll know when they're actually being lying when they're talking to somebody. So we're moving pretty quickly to the end of today, so we're running out of time. So Nicole, have you got any more to add to the discussion today?
Oh, look, I think it's for me it's about one conversation at a time. I think it's the conversations we have with ourselves. It's the conversations we have, because I love one-on-ones. I love one-on-one conversations. I think, you know, you just find out so many things that you would never do if you're in a group, and so that's kind of my nature that I really like. So I just, having an expansive mind, and just conversation by conversation, and be curious.
Angela, how would you finish off today? Any tip?
I would say that based on everything that we've said, it just reconfirms to me, true leadership starts with self-leadership. So you have to be able to lead yourself before you can actually lead anybody else. And that's that personal responsibility. It's that sense of, I am leading a life that is ethical, that is, in alignment with my values and all of that. And we don't teach people to do that anymore. So it's bringing it back to that. And then when people have embraced that, then maybe take the next step and say, You know, when I always find it really funny when somebody says, you know, somebody should really do something about that. And I go,
that someone is.
Somebody, you know, and then take that to that level and say, so what could you do about it? And again, it's about being constructive about it rather than fighting the system, which I don't believe in either. It's about doing something that actually shifts that. And the conversations are really important. And since I'm on a metaphor track here anyways, you know the story about the starfish?
What's that one?
I'm going to call it gender neutral. Somebody walking down the beach, and the beach is full of starfish. It's low tide, and the starfish got stuck on the sand. And this person picks up a starfish and throws it into the water, picks up another one, throws it back into the water. And another person walks up and says, what are you doing? Well, I'm throwing starfish back into the water. And the person says, but you're not making a difference. And the person says, picks up another starfish, throws it back into the water, says, just made a difference to that one. So
Exactly.
if we treat it like this, and if we're going, I'm treating myself this way, and I am helping one at a time, well, then hopefully we'll get to that critical shift. And then it doesn't matter whether we're men or women, female or male, leadership just has a totally different taste, flavor.
Yeah, and I love those two metaphors that we've had. It's about time that we got out of the frog soup. And at the same time, it's, one starfish at a time. And I think that's pretty good to finish off on that. Yeah, we started out with this being a discussion about whether it should be men or women into politics, where it should be going. But it's come back, as I knew it would be, to ourselves. It doesn't matter if we're male or female. It comes down to who we are inside and what we're doing. So it's not a matter of we've got to have male, we've got to have female. It's back to ourselves.
Yeah.
But everyone today, guys, thanks very much for having been here. It's always great having discussions with everybody. And to everybody who's been listening in today, thanks very much for being here. Tell other people about the group and get some more people in here as well. We'll see you on the next panel discussion. And again, thank you very much, Angela, Nicole, and also Nick. We'll see you all later. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.